Good morning. Welcome to the 2017 IRA National Championship, day number 2. We are looking at a great series of races this morning. We'll be starting off with the men's varsity 8 semifinals. Semifinals 1 and 2 with 3 crews moving from the semifinal into tomorrow's grand finals. Following that, we'll be in the third level semifinals for the varsity 8. Following that, with heats for the women's varsity lightweight 8s, the first chance to see the women's varsity lightweight 8s on the water at this year's IRA Championships. After the lightweight women's 8s, we'll be with the heavyweight men's second varsity semifinals. Following that, with the third varsity semifinals, moving into the varsity 4 semis at 9:52. And finishing the day off with heats for the women's varsity lightweight 4 and the women's lightweight double as well. And with a final race of the day, a repechage for the women's varsity lightweight 8. So today the schedule is adjusted a little bit. We have a scheduled dam opening here at Lake Natoma later this morning where the flow of the lake will increase. So it necessitated a change to an earlier schedule with a condensed format. So we are moving to 8-minute centers, so 8 minutes separating the start of each race. So things will move a little quicker throughout the day. We'll have great coverage from the drone, from the launch, and from the shore. Stay tuned all day for great rowing at day 2 of the 2017 IRA National Championships.
Whether the race does or not. Yeah. Crews are locked in and ready for the first semifinal of the day, the men's varsity 8. We've got Yale in lane 1, Washington in 2, Princeton in 3, Cornell 4, Pennsylvania in 5, and Dartmouth in lane 6. We've got the aligner underway. It looks like we'll be ready to start just about right on time. So 3 are going to go through to the grand final from this group. We have Yale and Washington, heat winners yesterday, over in lanes 1 and 2, and the polling has begun. So, in just a few seconds, the IRA will be on the water. And the crews are off. Clean start. And the dead silence on the lake is now full of coxswains barking away. Washington and Yale are at 48 and 45 respectively, and they have a slight lead over Princeton in lane 3. He's very far behind right now. Princeton's at 42.5, and now the three bows in lanes 1, 2, and 3 are about level. It's Yale, Washington, and Princeton about a third of a length ahead of Cornell and Dartmouth, with Penn another couple of feet behind. It's Yale and Princeton now pushing hard. Princeton staying high has poked their nose right up in front. They're still at 400 meters in, and they are now a deck length ahead of Yale. Yale has a deck length on Washington. Then it's about 2/3 of a length back to Cornell and Dartmouth, with Penn just a few feet behind those two. Princeton will cross 500 meters in the lead by a deck over Yale. We've got an unofficial 1:19 for that first 500 from my fellow charioteer Fred Schock. It's Washington and Yale both coming back. Yale is now just a foot or so behind Princeton. Washington 2 seats behind, and the rest are about a length back and just about even. That's Cornell, Penn, and Dartmouth. So it's Yale now at 36 has gotten by Princeton again, and they lead the Tigers by a deck. It is Washington drawing level and now even with Princeton. So those two a quarter length behind the Bulldogs from New Haven. And then it's a length back to Dartmouth and Penn, and another seat back to Cornell. It's Yale beginning to extend. Yale now with about 4 or 5 seats on Washington. Washington now with 3 seats on Princeton. The Huskies now make a charge, though, coming into the 1,000. Washington is at 39, approaching the 1,000, and they are closing back in on Yale. It's now a deck length from Yale back to Washington. Princeton now half a length behind.
44.
We've unofficially got about a 2:44 for the Bulldogs at the 1,000. They are hanging on. It's still a deck length over the Huskies. Princeton a half a length back, and it looks like Dartmouth and Penn starting to push on Princeton, hoping to snag that third place transfer into the grand final. Again, the Huskies charge. It's Washington moving back. It's a seat and a half now to Yale. And now it's 1 seat. We're at 12:50 gone. Washington overstroking Yale, but they are now within a foot of the Yale bow ball. It's now nearly a length back to Princeton, 3/4 of a length from Princeton back to Dartmouth, Penn, and Cornell. The Huskies have just edged into the lead, 13:50 into the race. So it's Washington barreling towards the 1,500-meter mark, now with a 2-seat lead over Yale. Princeton 1 length back, and here they go through the 1,500 with Washington in front, Yale, Princeton, and then a length back to Dartmouth, Penn, and Cornell.
All right, so Washington with the big move to regain the lead from Yale in that third 500 meters. Princeton, Yale, and Washington looking to be your 3 qualifying crews into the grand final of the IRA. So we have a great race coming down the course from the beach here. Beautiful shot, wonderful rowing here from Washington and Yale and Princeton. The 3 remaining crews behind, Cornell, Pennsylvania, and Dartmouth, looking for great racing from all 6 of these crews as they come up to the beach. So right now, Washington is attacking, moving ahead of Yale. Yale responding back to to them in the final 250 meters. So a very tight race between Washington and Yale. A great effort from both these crews. So looking for who is going to be coming away with the win. It is a critical part of the day because seedings and lane assignments could be based on your placement order of today's semifinal. So Yale pressing Washington hard all the way to the line. Princeton holding their third qualifying spot. So Washington just inching ahead of Yale. Yale surging for the line as well. A couple seat lead for the Huskies right now as we come to the line. It looks like we got Washington by just over a deck length ahead of Yale. A great race from those two crews. Princeton looking to secure the third semifinal position. And Dartmouth, Cornell, and Penn to finish out a great first race of day number 2 of the 2017 IRA. Really good racing to start the day here on Saturday morning. We will be moving up to the start line shortly to get ready for race number 2, the semifinal number 2, with 7-boat race with 3 to qualify to move into the grand final. Harvard, California, Brown, Syracuse, Wisconsin, Boston University, and Northeastern in semifinal number 2 coming up shortly. We'll try to get you the race results here in just a second for semifinal number 1. So again, semifinal number 2 coming up quickly here. The 3 crews placing first, second, third in this semifinal will be joining Washington, Yale, and Princeton in tomorrow's grand final to determine a national champion for 2017. And final results for semifinal number 1, Washington was your winner in 5:34.94. Yale in second, 5:35.49. Princeton was third, 5:43.3. Dartmouth, 5:45.8. Cornell, 5:46.0. And Pennsylvania finishing that first semifinal in 5:48.2 seconds. So great racing there, and we can expect the same thing from a very exciting 7-boat semifinal coming down the course in just a few minutes. Do we want me doing a start of this?
Back down to you're going to take them off the line and go for the first 500. Normal procedure. Looks like they've stopped and stabilized, but
is the idea that they're doing this if everything functions right?
Just heat 1. All right, so in this second semifinal, Harvard in lane number 1, your heat winner yesterday. Second heat winner, California in lane 2. In lane 3, we have Brown, who finished second in their heat to qualify automatically into this semifinal. Syracuse was another second place finisher in their heat just behind Yale, ahead of Boston University and Pennsylvania in their heat yesterday. Wisconsin in lane 5 came through the repechage in the afternoon, as did Boston University, and Northeastern is in lane 7. A mishap on the course yesterday with a goose. 7-boat semifinal, and we have a start to semifinal number 2. 3 crews to qualify and join Washington, Yale, and Princeton in the grand final. So looking forward to a great race here. We have Harvard on the left part of your screen in lane 1, moving out. California in 2, Brown in 3, Syracuse in 4, Wisconsin in 5, Boston University in 6, and Northeastern on the lane 7 outer lane. So very exciting 7-boat race here, and it looks like California came storming off the line as they've done all season, asserting themselves as your early leader. California, Golden Bears looking in the first 200 meters or so to have established at least a few seat lead over the field. The rest of the field about as tightly packed as you're going to see. 6 boats across, not much separating those 6 crews here in the early going. So California off to a hot start, getting the lead, really pushing ahead of Harvard and Brown, the 2 crews in the adjacent lanes. So looking across, Harvard is probably your second place crew right now, with the other 5 crews nearly deadlocked and 1 spot to go in, along with the first and second place crews, which right now California is looking to lock in that semifinal win and move towards the grand final. Harvard is your second place crew. Northeastern really gunning for it now from the outside lane in lane 7. Northeastern looking to be your third place boat right now. So California and Harvard. Harvard has moved back into that California lead. Harvard really hanging with California right now, and only a couple of seats back off of the Golden Bears. So Northeastern doing a great job in lane 7. And it looks like Boston University right next to them running in the 4th place position to give them a little bit of challenge. So Brown and Boston University are looking to challenge Northeastern right now and try to get the 3rd and final spot into the semifinal. So Harvard doing a great job moving back up now into the California lead. So less than a deck length now separating California from Harvard, with Northeastern running in 3rd qualifying position right now, but we can expect a great race from these 5 crews that are trying for that 1 remaining spot into the semifinals.
Boston University and Wisconsin having a good fight. Syracuse now moved into 5th, with 7 crews, that's correct. California and Harvard, though, at 1,000 are dead level. It's Cal still at 39 strokes a minute. We'll get a rating check on Harvard. Harvard's just taking a press. Harvard at 37 is taking seats from Cal now, and they are taking a massive move at the 1,000. Brown in 3rd now has come up, and it's that race for that 3rd qualifying spot. But Harvard just took Cal to school there at the 1,000 and pushed out 3 or 4 seats. So I think the high rating Cal didn't have a whole speed answer for that Harvard move. Harvard 37, let's see if Cal can bring it back. Brown is doing a nice job now, have come up overlapping California, their bow on the coxswain of Cal. So it's starting to spread out in this 3rd 500. The Huskies in lane 7 are still in contention, very much as is Syracuse for that 3rd spot. But Brown really having a good row there, looks in control. 500 meters to go, coming right up with Harvard 2/3 of a length up on Cal. Brown safely in 3rd, but challengeable by Syracuse and Northeastern.
Okay, so Syracuse and Northeastern trying to contend with Brown for that 3rd spot into tomorrow's grand final, with Harvard looking very strong. Nice smooth rowing from the Harvard crew, out in the lead right now. They have the spot. They're in lane 1, closest to the shore. 2nd place, and in lane 2 is California, holding on to that 2nd qualifying spot. So we're looking for California here in the last 250 to crank it up, try to move back into that Harvard lead. And following the 3rd qualifying spot, Brown holding, seeing if Northeastern and Syracuse can contend for that final spot into tomorrow's grand final. But Harvard looking very good along the shore here. Nice crisp catch, good movement together. You can see very strong push through the whole drive. California surging right now. California, you can see, is lifting the rate a little bit more, trying to cut back into that Harvard lead, with Brown just behind California in that 3rd qualifying spot. And it looks like it's going to be too much room for Northeastern or Syracuse to try to make up that lead. But Brown is surging, trying to catch Cal here in the final meters. Harvard is your clear leader right now in the last few strokes of the race. So we have Harvard Surging to the line now, Harvard is your winner of semifinal number 2, followed by California and Brown University in a great effort to finish in the top 3 qualifying position. Syracuse, Northeastern, Wisconsin, and Boston University to finish out the field. So the first 3 crews will be moving on to tomorrow's grand final, places 1 through 6, and the remaining 4 crews will move into the petite final for places 7 through 13. All right, so coming up next, we have more varsity men's 8 semifinal action. These are the 3rd level qualifier semifinals. And we are off already, so exciting to get races underway right away here. We have in semifinal number 3, Florida Institute of Technology in lane 1, Columbia in lane 2, Drexel in 3, Oregon State in 4, and St. Joe's in lane 5. It looks like from the view from the drone, we have a good tight early race here. Not a lot of separation from the 5 crews. So 3 of these crews will move on to tomorrow's 3rd level final, and the remaining 2 will be in the 4th level final tomorrow on the final day of the IRA regatta. So right now it looks like Columbia and FIT inching out ahead of Drexel, St. Joe's, and Oregon State. So a good start from all crews, a clean start. It looks like Columbia is your early leader with FIT, both crews just battling back and forth. It might be either one of them depending on the stroke. Drexel in that next qualifying position, Oregon State and St. Joe's locked up pretty tight for that 4th and 5th position. So again, 3 crews from this race will move on to tomorrow's 3rd level final. And Columbia doing a great job getting their bow across the 500-meter mark first. FIT and Drexel in those other 2 qualifying positions. St. Joe's and Oregon State trailing right now, but we have a good tight race, a lot of overlap. I don't think that any crew is not overlapping here. So we have Columbia in the lead, FIT contending with them alongside Drexel. St. Joe's is moving up, just a little inching forward on the Oregon State crew. So as they head out to about 700 meters in here, it's looking like Columbia is their clear leader. So Columbia being very strong off the start, and we're going to head out to the launch now.
750 meters into semifinal 3, it's Columbia at 35 with about a 1/3 of a length lead on Florida Tech and about a 3/4 length lead on Drexel. So those 3 are right now in the qualifying positions for the C final, but Drexel has only half a length over both Oregon State and St. Joseph's. It's FIT beginning to draw up even on Columbia. They've come from a 1/3 of a length back to about 2 seats back as we approach the 1,000-meter mark. Columbia and FIT both throwing 37 within a couple of seats of one another, and the rest of the field is tightening up as well. Drexel is half a length behind the leaders, and then it's a 1/3 of a length to Oregon State and another couple of seats to St. Joseph's. Columbia surges at the 1,000. Columbia takes a surge and pulls out to a half a length lead over Florida Tech, but the Dragons are coming with them. It's now Drexel closing in on FIT for second, and speaking of dragging along with them, the other crews are coming as well. I'd say from 1st place Columbia to 5th place St. Joseph's, it's exactly 1 length. So Columbia leads by a 1/3 of a length over FIT. FIT with a seat over Drexel. Drexel with half a length over Oregon State, and then a few seats further back to St. Joseph's. Drexel now closes in on FIT and is closing in on Columbia. Drexel has taken 2nd place and is now about 4 seats behind Columbia. It's 1 seat back to FIT, who is mounting a counter response, still a half a length back to Oregon State. So St. Joseph's begins to drop back a little bit, but it looks like we've got 3 crews fighting desperately for the lead, and the 4th place crew, Oregon State, well within striking distance of qualification as we approach 500. So it's Columbia leading at 500, FIT and Drexel level, Oregon State half a length back.
Okay, so great racing from Columbia here. They've got that lead early on. They've held it the whole way down. Drexel and FIT really fighting for in that second and third place position. Oregon State just trailing a half a length behind with a little bit of course left. 500 meters left to go for the Beavers from Oregon State to try to make up and move into that final qualifying position. So Columbia, your clear leader right now. FIT along the shore, and Drexel in lane 3 in the other two qualifying positions, with Oregon State surging from lane 4, trying to come up and catch one of these crews to move forward to the third level final. So a good effort from the Columbia Lions. They are really moving here in the final 250 meters. You can see Columbia, FIT, and Drexel trying to catch Columbia at the line, and Oregon State trying to catch either Drexel or FIT to move into that third level final. So all crews lifting their rate, really trying to surge here in the final 200 meters. It looks like we have a very close race. FIT's shown a good sprint this weekend, and it looks like they're showing that again right now. So FIT surging to the line. Columbia in the lead. FIT close behind them. Drexel in third, with Oregon State really trying to close in the final meters here. And it looks like Columbia by a deck length. FIT over Drexel by a deck length over Oregon State, and St. Joe's rounding out the field. So a good tight race between those four crews. You saw overlap the whole way down the race course from those four crews. So just taking a look back, it looks like the three crews that will qualify into the semifinal or into the third level final are FIT, Columbia, and Drexel. Oregon State and St. Joe's will be into the fourth level final tomorrow. So just going back to look quickly at the results of semifinal number 2, Harvard finishing in 5:38.3, California in 5:39.6, Brown, your third qualifier, in 5:40.2, with Syracuse at 5:44.1, Northeastern at 5:45.9, Wisconsin at 5:48 flat, and Boston University at 5:49.1. So a very good second semifinal. The third semifinal was a highly entertaining race, with Columbia holding the lead the whole way down the race course, qualifying into the third level final alongside Florida Tech and Drexel University. So in our final men's varsity 8 semifinal, we have the Naval Academy in lane 1 closest to the beach, Stanford in lane 2, George Washington in 3, Santa Clara in lane 4, and UC San Diego on the outside in lane 5. And Hobart in lane 6.
That's why I'm standing.
Pen was covering. All right, so semifinal number 4 coming up here shortly. You can see from the view from the drone, great conditions here at Lake Natoma. The schedule's a little condensed due to the dam opening scheduled for later this morning, but very fair, very good conditions for high-level racing here this morning. Barely a breath of wind coming from the beach, moving from lane 1 out to lane 6, so just a slight touch of crosswind, cross-headwind, barely enough to really affect these crews. Coming up next after this last semifinal, we'll have the heats of the women's varsity lightweight 8s. We have the start to the final semifinal of the day for the heavyweight 8s. It looks like your three crews in lane 1, 2, and 3 are your leaders right now. The Naval Academy, Stanford, and George Washington getting out to an early lead over Santa Clara, UC San Diego, and Hobart. So we're looking right now down on these crews, 6 boats across. You can see it looks to be the Naval Academy getting their bow ahead first here, with George Washington running right with them. Stanford very tight to those 2 crews, with Hobart and Santa Clara the next 2 crews. So 3 boats to qualify into that third level final, where they will join Florida Tech, Columbia, and Drexel. And right now it's looking like the 3 crews that will move are the first 3 lanes, Naval Academy, Stanford, and George Washington. So good surge here from the Naval Academy. The midshipmen moving up about a half a length on the Stanford boat, maybe a few seats, 2 to 3 seats on George Washington. And in the lower half of the screen here, you can see a good race going on. Hobart pushing on Stanford's third place position. And Santa Clara just behind and pressing on Hobart and Stanford as well. So a good effort from all crews here, barely separating all 6 boats. Let's go out to the launch now and get the action up close.
Santa Clara, UCSD, and Hobart, and it's a very tightly bunched field. Hobart running out here in lane 6, closest to the camera, is in 3rd. I think Navy is in 1st by a couple of seats over GW. Stanford bracketed in between. So those are the top 4 crews. Then it falls back to Santa Clara and UCSD. Navy trying to punch it out here a little bit and get 3 or 4 seats, but Stanford has come back. They've surged into 3rd place in lane 2. All the leaders rowing a comfortable 36 strokes a minute. GW now in 3rd. And then over here to Hobart for 4th place. Santa Clara 5, UCSD 6. Can Stanford make a push now into Navy? They're only about a deck down or a couple seats down. Those 3 crews running for the C final here. Navy's taking a press here at the 1,000 and now is at 38 strokes a minute, so they've gone up in rating and speed as they've pulled a couple of seats away from Stanford and GW. Navy still has the advantage. Stanford now 1 seat up on George Washington. Then it's almost a full length back to Hobart. Hobart's got better part of a length over Santa Clara, and then they have a full length on UCSD. Stanford really wants to take the lead here in the 3rd 500, coming up about 7:50 to go. Stanford working really hard trying to get the lead away from Navy, but the midshipmen are having none of it. Both at 37. Navy's still out there, a couple seats up. Let's see if Drexel's going to do something here. They have been playing cat and mouse with Stanford, but right now it's lanes 1, 2, and 3 in that order, but just a seat apart in each case. 500 meters to go. We'll turn it over to the expert commentary at the tower.
Final 500 meters here to close out this last semifinal of the men's varsity 8s. We have the Naval Academy with Stanford really challenging them for the lead. George Washington in the final qualifying position to move into the 3rd level final. Santa Clara, UC San Diego, and Hobart in the outside lanes. Hobart has done a good job of pressing those lead 3 crews, trying to get enough traction to move into those qualifying spots into the 3rd level final, assuring a finish in the top 20 in the nation. So right now it looks like the Naval Academy along the shore really pressing, doing well, getting the clean catches, moving the boat together with Stanford pressing right behind them and George Washington contending as well. Those 3 crews looking to be the 3 to move on to tomorrow's 3rd level final, with the Naval Academy along the shore here lifting the rate but staying very steady, holding off any charge from the Stanford crew in the next lane over, with George Washington throwing everything they can at the Stanford crew to try to gain one more position here in the final, the 3rd level final tomorrow. So a very tight, close race here. The midshipmen from Navy looking to secure that spot. They're in the lead with, it looks to be, George Washington surging. George Washington is trying to catch the Naval Academy right now. It's Navy over the line first, George Washington second, and Stanford in the 3rd position to move forward to the 3rd level final. Hobart just ahead of Santa Clara, and rounding out the field, UC San Diego finishing strong to wrap up the semifinals for the men's varsity 8s. So a great set of races to start off day 2 of the 2017 IRA Championships. We move next to the women's lightweight category. Looking for the women's lightweight heats. Coming up next, we have heat number 1, Stanford, your number 1 seeded crew, number 1 ranked in the country, Stanford Cardinal in lane 1, Wisconsin in 2, Princeton in 3, and Georgetown in lane 4. Let's see if we got some results for these last 2 semifinals. In semifinal number 3, we had the winner Columbia in 550.3, FIT in 550.8, Drexel 552.2, Oregon State 553.1, and St. Joe's in 601.6. You can follow along and get live results on your phone by following the IRA Twitter account at IRA Rowing Champs. So please follow. You can get results as quick as we do here in the booth. So up next, we have the heats for the women's varsity lightweight eights. We'll be returning up to the start line shortly for the start of those women's races.
And we are off for the women's lightweight 8. This is heat 1, a clean start from all of these crews. Stanford, Wisconsin, Princeton, and Georgetown. Of course, Stanford, our defending champion here, coming into the event seated first. They're looking to chase their 3rd consecutive title this year. But certainly some fast contenders. And off the line, Stanford out pretty quick, Wisconsin with them. Princeton in 3rd, Georgetown 4th, Stanford clearly leading now over Wisconsin by about a quarter of a length, almost a half a length. And it's a clean start again from all 4 of these crews, 400 meters in, approaching the 500 down. Wisconsin in lane 2 finished 4th in the event last year. They come in with seed 4 in the 2017 championship. It is Stanford in 1st, Wisconsin 2nd, Princeton 3rd, Georgetown 4th, about 10-12 strokes to the 500 down. And it'll be Stanford to cross over into the middle 1,000 first, now up half a length over Wisconsin. Wisconsin leading 3rd place, Princeton over to the water.
No cue. We're 700 meters into the first heat of the women's lightweight 8, and Stanford at 37 strokes a minute has already established a 1-length lead over Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a half a length over Princeton, and Princeton about 3/4 of a length over Georgetown. So this is 2 to go through to the final. Stanford at 37 and Wisconsin at 36 right now in those positions, but it looks like Princeton beginning to close a bit on Wisconsin. That's now about 1/3 of a length. Princeton also understroking the other 2 crews by a bit. They're 35.5. But it's Stanford now with about a quarter length of open water at 900 meters in over Wisconsin. Wisconsin with 1/3 of a length over Princeton and then 1 length back to Georgetown. So Wisconsin now seems to have blunted that move from Princeton at 1/3 of a length. But there's a long time to go in this yet. Stanford crosses the 1,000 with about a length and 1/3 lead. Stanford still motoring along at 37 strokes a minute, and they're beginning to extend that lead now a little bit more every stroke. It looks like Stanford ready to row away with it. The Tigers are coming. The Tigers are coming. They're now a deck length behind the Badgers. So it's Wisconsin and Princeton, both at 36, but Princeton moving up inch by inch. It's now down to a seat and a half. So Wisconsin trying to hold on in this third 500 for that second qualifying spot, but it is Princeton now drawing level. So at 800 meters to go, it's Princeton moving into that second spot. Stanford with about 3/4 of a length open over Princeton, and Princeton really slicing through this Wisconsin boat. That's already a third of a length, and then it's a little bit of open water back to Georgetown. So both Princeton and Wisconsin at 36 and a half, still the main fight here. Second place crucial to moving through, but at this point the Princeton boat is really digging in. They've now got a little over half a length over Wisconsin. So approaching 500, it's Stanford clear of the field. Princeton, having just gone through Wisconsin, we'll have to see if Wisconsin can fight back, and then open water back to the Hoyas.
And moving into the last 500 of the women's varsity lightweight 8, what a middle thousand from Princeton. We see them now up about one length over Wisconsin, and it is a race for second with the first two crews advancing to the grand final. Right now it's looking like that will be Stanford and Princeton, but there's still time in the remaining 300 meters as these crews approach the 250 to go. Keeping an eye on Wisconsin and Princeton. Stanford looking solid, cool and collected out in lane 1. Wisco and Princeton know that there's not much time as they come into the last 250. And it's Stanford in lane 1, again coming in with the number 1 seed here, pressing into the last 200 meters to get their bow ball to the line. And it's looking like Princeton will go with them to the grand final. We'll see as these crews get a little bit closer, but Stanford not looking back as they move into the last 20 strokes. Princeton now decidedly over Wisconsin with an open water lead. It is Princeton now in their last 20 strokes for Heat 1 of the women's varsity lightweight 8. And look at Stanford go, collected, clearly in control of this race, up one length over second place Princeton, which means it'll be Stanford in their last 5-7 strokes to advance to the grand final, with the Tigers now well into their last 10 strokes to go with them. It is seed 1, Stanford, seed 5, Princeton finishing second, Wisconsin in lane 2 coming in the line for third, with Georgetown now in their final 15 strokes. It is Stanford and Princeton to advance to the grand final. Up next, Heat 2 of the women's varsity lightweight 8. Oh, thank you. Are they already on? No. And times are in for the men's varsity 8 semi number 4. We had Navy in first at a 550.4. Second, George Washington, 551.3. Third, Stanford at a 551.7. Hobart in fourth, 557.9. Santa Clara fifth, 558.8. And University of California, San Diego, 607.8.
Come all the way out here to lose.
And the crews are off for Heat 2 of the women's lightweight 8 with Radcliffe, Boston, Tulsa, and MIT. Radcliffe comes in with seed number 2, BU seed number 3, Tulsa seed 6, and MIT seed 7. It is a clean start for all 4 of these crews, and Radcliffe and Boston out pretty quick out of the gate. These crews now in their high strokes, lengthening into their base cadence. Again, it is 2 to advance to the grand, and right now, at least in the first 300 meters, that would be Radcliffe and Boston. Radcliffe up about a bow deck, maybe a quarter of a length over Boston. Although Boston definitely answering Radcliffe here. Some nice work from the Terriers here in the first 300 meters. It is Boston over Radcliffe. Beautiful work from the Boston University crew in the first 400 meters. They are not looking back and moving to the first 500 meter mark. It is Boston half a length over Radcliffe. BU definitely asserting themselves in the first 500. It's BU over Radcliffe by about a quarter of a length now, just a little less than a half a length, I'd say. But clearly, Boston and Radcliffe are out to advance themselves to the grand final. Third place, Tulsa. Fourth place, MIT, with Boston and Radcliffe open water lead back to Tulsa and MIT. Man, look at Boston go. Half a length up over Radcliffe. They're on the move, entering into the middle 1,000 over the water.
All right, we've got race number 6, a second heat here of the lightweight women's 8s, and Boston University has established an early lead with about 650 meters in. They're running a third of a length. Cliff, who is also at 37. Then it's back a full length to Tulsa. Tulsa's got about 2 seats on MIT, but they are a full length back, a splash of open back of those 2 leaders. Boston University putting on a clinic here is just drawing away from Radcliffe. Look tight to the water and good acceleration in their red hull as they continue to press out. Coxon now on just about the bow of the Radcliffe 8. So it's 36 for BU, long and strong. Those 2 crews, 37 for Radcliffe, are now a quarter length open ahead of MIT. MIT now has reversed its position with Tulsa, and MIT, I would say, has a seat on Tulsa at this point. Who is? MIT at 38-39, really turning over high. As we pass through the 1,000, Boston University in control here, looking very sharp. 1 length for BU over Radcliffe. Radcliffe turning over a little bit higher. So just a little bit more run, a little bit more control in the Boston boat as these 2 cross town, not even cross town rivals. Yes, I guess they are. They're separated by the Charles River, but their boathouses are both in Cambridge, so very close. Boston University now down to 35 strokes a minute. Has got open water on Radcliffe, so crews beginning to stretch out. Nothing has changed between MIT and Tulsa. They're, basically side by side, stroke for stroke. MIT might have an advantage of a few feet. So we'll see tomorrow whether Boston University can stack up with that Stanford crew. That was quite a show they put on in the last race. It looks like, unless something dramatic happens here, Boston will clearly win this heat. And we'll turn it over to the tower in just a minute as we get to 500 meters to go. It's a quarter length open. 33 strokes a minute for Boston, really out for a stroll here. And we'll turn it over to the tower.
And moving into the last 500, Boston University clearly in control of this race. Boston looking to go after their first title this year. And right now they're looking good with an open water lead over Radcliffe to advance themselves to the grand final. So it's 2 to advance, and right now it's looking like that is BU and Radcliffe. Again, Boston University, we saw them rowing at about a 35 in the body, so clearly in control of this race as they approach the last 250 to go. It is Boston and Radcliffe, again with 2 to advance to the grand. And Boston University again coming in now to about 150 meters to go. It is Boston in lane 2, Radcliffe in lane 1. But Boston clearly in command of this race, with the rest of the field just pressing them back in their final 20 strokes. Beautiful work from the Terriers here. This is Malcolm Doldren's crew, and look at them go in the last 20 strokes. It is Boston with open water back to Radcliffe. Calm, cool, and collected as they press through the last 10 strokes. Boston University walking their way straight into the grand final, followed by Radcliffe definitely a bit higher as they move through their last 10. And so it's Boston and Radcliffe to advance to the grands, followed by MIT in third and Tulsa in fourth. Boston and Radcliffe will join Stanford and Princeton in the grands. And times are in for heat number 1. It was Stanford in first at 6:30.8, second Wisconsin at a 6:35.5, Princeton third at a 6:38.5, and Georgetown fourth at a 6:55.3. We'll have times here in a moment for heat 2. So again, for the women's lightweight 8, the top 2 spots advance to the grands. The remaining crews will go to the reps. And up next, we have semifinal number 1 for the men's second varsity 8. And we have the drone coming back up for semifinal number 1 of the second varsity 8s. And these crews are now off. Washington, Harvard, Northeastern, Boston, Penn, and Dartmouth. From our drone view, looking like all of these crews pretty clean out of the gate. Washington definitely on the move, though, over in lane 1, keeping an eye on them. With Harvard, I'd say Washington and Harvard had really fast starts along with Boston University. Over in lane 4. Pretty quick out of the gate from the Terriers as well, but it is Washington. I'd say with Harvard in second, Boston quick in the first 300 meters. What a start from the Terriers. These crews moving through the first 300 toward the 500 down. So it's Washington, an early leader here. And we'll send it over to the launch.
Launch audio is live in 3, 2, 1. Launch is live.
So crossing 500 meters of the first semifinal of the second varsity 8 is Washington. They've got nearly 1 length on Harvard. BU, though, has a barn burner of a start. They're rowing 37, and they're only about a seat and a half behind Harvard in third place, and now they have actually drawn level with Harvard. So it's Washington by just under a length over BU and Harvard, then a length back to Dartmouth and Northeastern, and another half a length back to Pennsylvania. So Washington, 1 length now on Harvard, who is edged out again about a seat on BU. It's Washington at 38.5 now with a little bit of open water for the first time, 800 meters into the race. Harvard at 38.5 now has not quite a deck on BU. BU, though, at 37.5 has open water over Dartmouth and Northeastern, who are about level, and Pennsylvania, who is now about 3 seats further back. But crossing the 1,000, it's Washington with about 5 feet of open water over Harvard. Harvard now with a deck over Boston University. But BU is still moving away from that second tier. BU has about 10 feet of open water over Dartmouth. Dartmouth with a couple of seats over Northeastern, and Pennsylvania drawing up almost level with Northeastern. So Washington still pushing to the 4. That's about 8 feet of open water now. Harvard with a third of a length now on Boston University. BU with about a half a length of open water over Dartmouth, Northeastern, and Penn, who are now essentially straight across level. Washington looking fairly unconcerned now. You can visibly see them relax in the last 10 strokes. They're feeling very comfortable. They've got about 8 feet of open water on Harvard, but BU coming up on Harvard again has come back to a deck length down. So as we approach the 500 meter mark to go, it is Washington looking strong. Open water lead over Harvard. Harvard again under attack from Boston University. And the Terriers' early barn burner of a start has put them in qualifying position. Open water ahead of Northeastern, Penn, and then Dartmouth.
And moving into the last 500 of the men's second varsity 8 semifinal number 1, an exciting race right now between Washington, Harvard, Boston University, with 3 to advance to the grand. And right now, Washington out clearly in control of this race with an open water lead over Harvard and Boston. Harvard and Boston getting work done in the middle 1,000, then back to Northeastern and Dartmouth, followed by Penn. Right now, though, Washington again coming in with the first seed, looking long and strong as they approach the last 250. It is Washington right now entering into the red buoys, looking like they'll be first to put their bow across the finish line. Will it be Boston? Will it be Harvard? We'll see as these crews get a little bit closer, but it's definitely looking like these are our 3 contenders for the grand final. It is Washington, Boston, Harvard, then back to the rest of the field. But look at Washington go in lane 1, cruising and not looking back. Right now in their final 10 to 15 strokes, it is Washington, Boston, with Harvard in third, Harvard in second, Boston University in third. Those are our 3 crews to advance to the grand. Washington, Harvard, Boston, 4th place Northeastern, 5th place Penn, 6th place Dartmouth. For the men's second varsity 8 semi 1, it is Washington, Harvard, and Boston to advance to the grand, with the remaining crews moving to the petite. Up next, men's second varsity 8 semi number 2. This will include Cal, Yale, Brown, Princeton, George Washington, and Cornell. Times are in for the women's varsity lightweight 8 heat 2. It was Boston, as we saw, at a 6:34.8. Back to Radcliffe in second, 6:40.1. MIT 6:47.2, and Tulsa 6:49.1. And so for the women's varsity lightweight 8, the 4 crews moving on to the grands again: Stanford, Wisconsin, Stanford, Princeton, Radcliffe, and BU. With the remaining crews moving on to the reps this afternoon. And the men's second varsity 8 semi 2 out of the gate. Fast start all around. Again, this is Cal, Yale, Brown, Princeton, George Washington, and Cornell. Really fast work from Cal and Yale out of the gate. No surprise there. Brown moving with them. Princeton quick as well, followed by George Washington and Cornell. I'd say Yale and Cal, though, are closest here. Princeton sticking right with them, but it does look like it's Yale fastest out of the gate over Cal. Back to Princeton in third. Really tight racing, though, between Princeton and Cal. Right now, Yale has its bow ball out just a bit more, though, I'd say by about a bow deck, which means it's Yale in first. Really tight between Cal and Princeton for second and third. Then back to Brown, followed by George Washington and Cornell. George Washington and Cornell very close here as well. But it is Yale by about a bow deck, our early leader in the first 500. Yale now definitely on the move. I'd say it's Yale by almost about a half a length. Really tight between Cal and Princeton, with 3 of these crews advancing to the grand. It is Yale first across into the middle 1,000. Is it Cal? Is it Princeton in second? We'll find out from the crew on the launch.
Semi-final 2 for the JV men is underway at 600 meters, and Yale looks like the leader by a few seats over California, and Princeton comfortably in third. So Yale taking a press here about 700 meters in, has about a half a length now, not quite, third of a length on California. Princeton had a good start and is rowing well within themselves. And then it drops back. It's a dead heat for 4, 5, and 6. GW, Cornell, and Brown just in that next echelon back. But Brown is probably got a few seats on GW and Cornell. Yale continues to push out now with 2/3 of a length over California. And California bumped it up to 38 to try and check their move. Maybe it's not 2/3, but it's a good 5 seats that Yale has on Cal. Princeton 36 just content right now where they are in lane 3. I checked that, lane 4. So Princeton's coming up now with going through the 1,000. Princeton's coming up a little bit on Cal. Their bow on the 7 seat of Cal. But Yale really working the magic here in the third 500. Continue to press and have got stroke on bow of California.
Cal went up to 38 now.
And Cal at 38, trying to answer Yale's move. And these crews continue to stretch it out over the trailing 3 crews. Brown is still working hard just to stay ahead of GW and Cornell. It's not their day to make it into the final here tomorrow. And Cal has taken another run at Yale, have maybe cut back a seat or 2. But they're both at 39 here with about 700 meters to go. So they're having a real dogfight for bragging rights for this semifinal. Yale would like to hang on for a win. Princeton a length off, so we'll get ready to turn it over to the tent as Yale in the lead.
And moving into the last 500, an exciting semifinal 2 for the men's second varsity 8, keeping an eye on Cal, Yale, and Princeton as our 3 contenders to advance to the grand final. Again, we saw Yale get out early. They seem to be maintaining their lead over second place Cal and third place Princeton. All of these crews now moving towards the last 250 into the red. We'll see as they get a little bit closer, but again, Yale seems to be leading this race here in the final stretch. So Yale, Cal, and Princeton with top 3 to advance, and it looks like it is Yale in lane 2. Beautiful work from them alongside Cal in lane 1, Princeton lane 4. These 3 crews looking to solidify their top 3 positions to advance to the grand, but it is Cal moving now on Yale. Cal definitely up to something in the last 20 strokes. Yale hanging on to their lead. Cal is on the move, though. Look at the sprint from the Bears. Cal on the move. It is Yale right now. Cal looking to kick them back in the last 10 strokes. It is Cal over Yale. Cal first, Yale second. Princeton now in their final 10 strokes for these 3 crews to advance. What an exciting semifinal number 2. Cal, Yale, Princeton, Brown now coming through the line, followed by GW and Cornell. Cal, Yale, Princeton joining Washington, Harvard, and Boston in the grands.
Okay, so a great surge there, a wonderful sprint from California demonstrating their power there to cruise past Yale to take the win in semifinal number 1 of the second varsity. So great racing from Cal, Yale, and Princeton there to move on into the into the grand final tomorrow of the second varsity 8. They'll be joining Washington, Harvard, and Boston University in tomorrow's grand final to determine the national champion in the second varsity 8. So Washington was your winner in semifinal number 1, 5:42.3. Harvard pressing at 5:45.6, and Boston University in 5:46.9. Northeastern was 5:50.7, Pennsylvania 5:51.9, and Dartmouth finishing in 5:54.6. So those 3 top crews will be moving on to the grand, the 3 lower crews moving into tomorrow's petite final. So we'll get the second semifinal results to you as soon as we have them. And we'll head back out to the start for 2 more semifinals of the men's second varsity 8. In semifinal number 3, we will have Columbia, Wisconsin, Syracuse, Drexel, St. Joe's, and Santa Clara in semifinal number 3, with the top 3 from that moving on to the 3rd level final tomorrow. So high quality racing all around in all events today here at the 2017 IRA Regatta. So a great race course here. We have this wonderful new drone provided by the alumni of Brown University, giving us a first time view from above looking down at the IRA Regatta. We have a start now to semifinal number 3. So the crews are off, and it looks like we've got in lane 1. In lane 1, we have Columbia. Lane 2, Wisconsin. Lane 3, Syracuse. Lane 4, Drexel. Lane 5, St. Joe's. And in the outer lane, farthest away from the shore, is Santa Clara. So right now we're looking to see who can take the start, and it looks to be the 3 crews on the inside lanes, the 3 that are a little higher seated. Looks like Columbia, Wisconsin, and Syracuse are your leaders right now. Drexel, St. Joe's, and Santa Clara just trailing the 3 leaders. Columbia and Wisconsin appear to be the 2 in the lead right now. So Wisconsin nudging their bow just ahead of Columbia and Syracuse. Looking like a good race setting up here for 3 crews moving through to the 3rd level final tomorrow. So these guys are racing for position here, racing to move into that into that final to get positions 13 through 18 tomorrow. So good chance for these guys, and so we got, and it looks like Columbia is the leader right now with Wisconsin running second, Syracuse being challenged by Drexel for that third qualifying spot. And let's head out to the guys in the launch.
Crossing 500 meters now of the first CD semifinal for the 2Vs, we have an extremely bunched field. There is not much to choose from first to sixth here. It's Columbia slightly ahead of Wisconsin, maybe by 2 seats for the lead. Wisconsin with about a deck on Syracuse, who has a half a deck on Drexel, who has a deck on St. Joseph's, who has a deck on Santa Clara. Columbia now has its deck lead on Wisconsin. Those two have taken away about a half a length now over Syracuse. Drexel still hanging right on Syracuse, about a deck back. 37.5 for Columbia, but they are under assault from the Badgers. Wisconsin draws up to within about a seat and a half of Columbia for the lead. It's still Syracuse, half a length back, another third of a length back to Drexel, and a half a length more to St. Joseph's and Santa Clara. Wisconsin takes the lead 900 meters in. Wisconsin leads Columbia by about 2 seats. They have a half a length over Syracuse, who has about a third of a length over Drexel. Wisconsin understroking, they're at 35.5, but they have taken the lead over Columbia, still at 37, by about 3 seats now. It's still a half a length back to Syracuse. Drexel right on Syracuse's heels for that third qualifying spot. It's now about a length back to St. Joseph's, and then a couple of seats further back to Santa Clara. Columbia has blunted the attack from Wisconsin. That has stabilized at about 3 seats now. Syracuse at 38, still maintaining the third place spot, but they're still fighting hard to hold off Drexel. Drexel's just about a half a length behind the Orangemen. Another little move from Wisconsin now at about 12:50 puts them about a third of a length ahead of Columbia. Columbia now actually getting a little bit nervous about Syracuse. Syracuse coming up to within about a third of a length of Columbia. Drexel still lurking, half a length back. So we've still got a pretty good dogfight going on here for the 3 qualifying positions and for the lead. It's Wisconsin now, a third of a length over Columbia at 500. A few seats back to Syracuse, and then another half a length to Drexel as we turn you over to the finish line tent.
All right, so Wisconsin throwing down some great strokes here, looking to move away from Columbia and Syracuse. So the Wisconsin guys trying to hold that lead here, just going as hard as they can to keep holding off Columbia in the final 500 meters. So Columbia and Syracuse are locked in right now, trying to be your second and third qualifiers to move on to the third level final tomorrow. So good racing going on from the Badgers in the lead right now, with Columbia giving them a challenge, as well as this crew from Syracuse running in lane 3, pushing on the 2 leaders as well. So right behind Syracuse, you have Drexel with St. Joe's and Santa Clara trailing, but the fight for first is between the Badgers and Columbia University here in lane 1. Columbia rowing nice and smooth, a good crisp catch coming from the 8 men from Columbia, and the Badgers really trying to nail down the finish here, throwing everything they can at each stroke here. So the Badgers leading right now with Columbia on lane 1, surging towards the finish now, and Syracuse in that third qualifying spot with Drexel right behind them. So good racing here for 3 qualifying crews, and it looks like the Badgers are going to hold off Columbia's charge, with Syracuse trying to charge, and it is the Badgers in first, Columbia second, and Syracuse really putting the pressure on Columbia as they finished with Drexel in 4th, St. Joe's in 5th, and Santa Clara finishing in 6th in that semifinal number 3. So results from semifinal number 2. California was your winner. California in 5:39.8 seconds, with Yale at 5:40.1, Princeton 5:47.4, and Brown finishing 4th, 5:52.5, George Washington 5:55.5, and Cornell finishing in 6th, 5:57.1. So you'll have those 3 crews, California, Yale, Princeton, joining Washington, Harvard, and BU in the grand final of the men's second varsity 8 tomorrow. So a good race here in semifinal number 3. Columbia and Syracuse pushing on the Badgers the whole way down the course, never really getting much separation from those 3 crews. So a good race in semifinal number 3, and looking forward to another good race coming up soon in semifinal number 4. So in semifinal number 4, we'll have Stanford in lane 1, closest to the shore, Navy in lane 2, Oregon State in 3, Hobart in 4, UC San Diego in 5, and Florida Institute of Technology in lane 6. So another set of good races coming up. View from the drone. The crews look to have backed into the starting dock. Really quality facility here. One of the best starting platforms in the country. Good, allows the crews to get positioned, coxswains locked on, and establish their point. So you end up with really strong, good quality racing off the start line. So we have a start now for semifinal number 4, the last semifinal for the men's second varsities. The top 3 crews will be moving on to the 3rd level final, the remaining crews into the 4th level final tomorrow morning. So Stanford in lane 1, Naval Academy in 2, Oregon State in 3, Hobart in 4, UC San Diego in 5, and Florida Tech in lane 6. Right now it looks like the Stanford crew along with Navy have taken the lead in the early going, but a tight field. It looks like Oregon State and UC San Diego are both trying to really contend with those 2 leaders early on here. But Stanford looks to have taken advantage of a quick start and got the lead. Navy and UC San Diego running in the 2nd and 3rd position, with overlap from the crews from Oregon State, Hobart, and FIT. So Stanford, your clear leader in the early part of the race. Stanford about getting 3 to 4, maybe even a half a length on Navy right now, and getting up to the bow ball of Oregon State. So let's go over to the launch.
All right, race number 10 is underway. Stanford and Navy on the inside on the spectator shore. And Navy had a good first 500 and has a better part of 3/4 of a length. Navy 38. Stanford out front. Stanford with almost a full length on Navy. And then UCSD in lane 5, probably running in 3rd, a deck ahead of Hobart. Then it would be over to Oregon State, a seat or so ahead of FIT. But Stanford looking strong here in the early going, the second 500. 38 for the Cardinal. Navy comfortably in second, about a half a length. But looks like Hobart is taking a push now to come up for that 3rd spot in lane 4.
Hobart and Navy 37.
Hobart and Navy at 37. Very tightly packed for, it's positions 3 through 6. But Hobart definitely starting to emerge as the 3rd place crew here. Stanford almost has a full length over Navy. Hobart beginning to separate from the rest of the field as we go through the 1,000. Hobart at 38. So they've taken a concerted move there, and that seems to be paying off for them. So it's really spreading out now in the 3rd 500, although Navy has come back about 2 or 3 seats on Stanford. So Navy may have been reserve, holding some in reserve in the second 500, but the Stanford Cox is looking over at Navy and a little bit concerned. So he is calling for more power, and they are beginning to check the move. And they're at 39, Stanford is. So they did not want Navy to cut back into that lead. Hobart clearly in third, about a half a length ahead right now of Oregon State. Oregon State is in fourth, and then it's tied for 5-6, UCSD and FIT. About 700 meters to go. It's still the West Coast Stanford leading the Naval Academy by 7 or 8 seats. Stanford 38. And Hobart clinging on to that third spot, although they're being challenged now. FIT is taking a nice push, and they're coming up to challenge Oregon State for that fourth spot. So we'll see if Hobart can hold on and own that third place spot. So we'll over to the technology tent.
Okay, so a good race going on. A great effort from the Stanford crew along the shore here. Coach Americanian's crew having a good start, solid middle 1,000, and now it's time for them to lock up this final 500 meters. The Naval Academy giving chase in lane number 2, position number 2, and Hobart holding on to that third place position right now, with FIT and Oregon State needing to go right now if they want to try to catch that third qualifying position to move into the third level final. So a good effort from the Cardinal in lane 1, with the Naval Academy in 2 as your second qualifier. Hobart in third right now, with Oregon State and FIT trying to press them for that third qualifying spot. So along the shore, you can see the Stanford third varsity 8 here, second varsity 8, is just pressing, really trying to keep their swing and momentum going as they approach the final 100 meters of the race course. So it's Stanford over the Naval Academy, with Hobart in third right now. Oregon State closing, trying to gain traction and catch Hobart at the finish line. But right now we have Stanford crossing the line first, Naval Academy in second. It looking like Hobart is going to hold on to that third position. Hobart third, FIT just edging out Oregon State at the finish for that fourth position. And UC San Diego finishing up in sixth. So your winner, Stanford, followed by the Naval Academy and Hobart. Those three crews will be moving on to the third level final, the remaining crews into tomorrow's fourth level final. So coming up next, we go to the semifinal number 1, crews looking to qualify for the grand final in the men's third varsity 8. So we'll return shortly to the starting platform. It looks like the crews are getting backed in, locked onto the starting dock here for semifinal number 1 of the men's third varsity 8. So a good look down at the crews on the starting platform. In lane 1 for this semifinal for the third varsity 8. Washington in lane 1, their rivals from the Pac-12 Conference. California in 2, Boston University in 3, Princeton in 4, Wisconsin in 5, and Syracuse out in lane 6. So looking for another good semifinal with these three crews looking to go on to the grand final to contend for the national championship in their event tomorrow. Final tomorrow will be Washington, Harvard, Boston University, California, Yale, and Princeton. That's the grand final for the men's junior varsity 8. Though it's not a lane order, that's just the 6 crews that are qualifying. We now have a start on our first race of men's third varsity 8 action for the day. So right now it looks like we've got Washington in lane 1, California coming off fast in lane 2, Boston University in 3, Princeton in 4, Wisconsin in 5, and Syracuse out in lane 6. It looks like your early leader, California, taking a quick start, getting their bow ball just ahead of Washington. Washington and California clearly leading off the line with Princeton as well. Wisconsin and Boston University in that 4th and 5th position here. Syracuse just trailing in 6th. We still have overlap of all the crews right now. So California taking a lead. California pushing away from Washington in the early going here. So in the Pac-12 championships, California won the freshman 8 event over Washington. Washington took the 3rd varsity 8. Looks like with the elimination of the freshman event, the California crew has moved some of those strong freshmen up into their 3rd varsity 8. So Washington looking to push back in. Princeton running right alongside Washington right now. Both those two crews maybe just a couple of seats back of California. So those are your 3 right now, with Boston University in 4th and Wisconsin 5th, Syracuse in 6th. So California, the first boat crossing that 500-meter mark. Washington and Princeton running very tight in that 2nd and 3rd position. Let's go over to the launch and check out the
600 meters into the first semifinal of the 3Vs. It's California, which has established itself with a half a length lead over both Washington and Princeton. Princeton just about level with Washington and a half a length ahead of Boston University. BU has a half a length on Wisconsin and another 1/3 of a length back to Syracuse. California and Washington begin to squeeze away. It's California by half a length over Washington, and now about a 1/4 of a length further back is Princeton. Princeton still has half a length over BU. BU now with 3/4 of a length over Wisconsin and a half a length back to Syracuse. So it's California rowing high and hard, holding on to that half-length lead over the Huskies.
37.5 for Cal.
Cal's about 37.5, and they're about a beat or 2 over Washington. Washington now has about a half a length over Princeton. Princeton with about a half a length over Boston University. And BU now crossing the 1,000 with just about a length over Wisconsin and a half a length further back to Syracuse. So it looks like it's going to be a 4-way fight for the 3 spots into the final. It's Washington now moving back on California. That half a length lead is down to about a 1/3 of a length. And it's about 3/4 of a length back from Washington now to Princeton, and about 2/3 of a length from Princeton to Boston University. Washington closing in, now 2.5 seats off California. The Washington coxswain is halfway up the deck of Princeton. The Princeton coxswain now moving forward on the BU bow ball. He's level with the BU bow ball. So it's California 2 seats ahead of Washington. It's Washington 3/4 of a length ahead of Princeton. It's Princeton a little more than 3/4 of a length over Boston University. With 700 meters to go, Washington takes another burst. It's down to 1 seat behind Cal. Now it's a half a seat. And now it's a dead even race for 600 meters between Washington and Cal. As we cross 500, it's a length back to Princeton. The fight for 3rd is Princeton over BU by about 3/4 of a length as we turn you to the finish line tent.
All right, so it's a straight-up street fight between the Huskies and the Bears in lane 1 and 2. Which one of these 2 rivals will take the finish of this first semifinal of the men's 3rd varsity 8? This is a great race coming down the course here. As they get alongside the beach, you saw Washington making a great move in the 3rd 500. California now attacking the Washington crew, seeing what they can throw at it, with Princeton in the next qualifying position here. Boston University trailing them, Wisconsin and Syracuse on the outside. So right now it's looking Washington and California coming down to the finish line here. Both crews really attacking this. Great rowing for the third level of their team. So these two crews really fought at the Pac-12 Championship at their dual regatta throughout the season. So we've had great racing going on between the Huskies and the Bears in a series of races this year. And right now it's looking like the Washington Sprint here in the final 500 meters. They are taking the lead back from the Golden Bears. So Princeton holding on to that third spot with a surging Boston University crew trying to take away that spot in the final. But it looks like the Huskies are going to do it here. About a 2-seat, 3-seat lead here. Huskies surging to the line. The Huskies are over. California in second. Princeton in third to move on to the grand final. Boston University with a good effort in lane 3, finishing in 4th position, ahead of Wisconsin in 5th, and Syracuse in your final position for this first semifinal of the men's 3rd varsity 8. So very good race coming from the top 3 crews there. Good contention from Washington, California, and Princeton. Those 3 will be moving on to the grand final of the men's 3rd varsity 8 tomorrow. So exciting race there. And we look forward to another great race here in the 2nd semifinal of the men's 3rd varsity 8. So you can see the view from the drone. We have great conditions out here on Lake Natoma today. The wind has not picked up too much at all. The flags are just moving a little bit, nothing to disrupt these crews. Very good water. The blade work of all these crews has not been affected by weather at all today. So let's take a look and see if we got the results from our final semifinal of the men's 2nd varsity. And in that last semifinal of the men's 2V, we have Stanford the winner at 5:54.8, with Navy close behind at 5:56.8, and Hobart at 6:01.8, FIT 6:04.3, Oregon State 6:04.39, and UC San Diego 6:10.1. So we'll be getting the results shortly of semifinal number 1 from the men's 3rd varsity, and off to the start of semifinal number 2 for the men's 3rd varsity 8. And running down the lane assignments for this 2nd semifinal, we have Harvard in lane 1, their rivals from Yale in 2, Cornell in lane 3, the Naval Academy in 4, Northeastern in 5, and Dartmouth in 6. So the men's 3rd varsity 8 semifinal number 2 coming up next. Top 3 will be joining Washington, California, and Princeton in the grand final. Looks like we have a start to the race now. So across the lane closest to the shore here from the drone's view is Harvard, Yale, Cornell, Navy, Northeastern, and Dartmouth. It looks like those lanes 1 through 4 came off the line pretty close together here. So Harvard, Yale in the lead with Cornell and Navy right with them. It looks like the Naval Academy staying very close in there with Harvard and Yale. So 3 crews will qualify into the grand final of tomorrow's 3rd varsity 8. So out in lane 6, it looks like Dartmouth as well, trying to make a fight of it, trying to get into that 3rd qualifying position. So Harvard and Yale locked in, side-by-side racing here. Great to see 2 crews really trying to establish and get the lead early on. Naval Academy not giving them much room. Naval Academy maybe back a 1/3 of a length right now, with Cornell trailing. Dartmouth making a good push into that 4th position, and Northeastern in the final 6th position right now, but we still have overlap from all 6 crews. Yale with a slight lead over Harvard, Naval Academy in 3rd. Let's go ahead and head on out to Fred and Bob in the launch.
Third varsity 8, semifinal 2. Harvard and Yale are out front. Harvard 38, Yale 37. Navy's running in 3rd in lane 4. Dartmouth in lane 6 would be 4th, followed by Cornell, a seat or so ahead of Northeastern, but about a 1/3 of a length back of Dartmouth. But it's all on the inside right now as Yale tries to take the advantage away from Harvard. 36 6 for Yale. 35.5. So those two are on cruise control. Navy, a strong third, about a length up on Dartmouth, Cornell, and Northeastern. Yeah, it's steady as she goes for Yale. About 2 seats up on Harvard as they approach the halfway mark. Yale trying to press a little bit more. Both of these very experienced crews as the talent from those two programs trickles down into the 3V.
Harvard up to 37.
Harvard taking a press here at 37 and coming up just a bit on Yale. And Yale sees it and is trying to check it with, it looks like just horsepower as opposed to rating. In fact, Yale, I think, has moved a seat out on Harvard. So Yale had an answer for that and just waited until Harvard made their move, and now they're going, and they have a third of a length over Harvard now. Navy's come up a little bit too since then, and their bow is overlapping Harvard's stern and into the coxswain area. Back in the field, it's Cornell slightly ahead of Dartmouth still, and Northeastern trying to make a press as well. So those three within a third of a length of one another. But open water back, exactly. Yale continues to march down, and 35, they're doing it with power. They're 6 seats up on Harvard. 37 for Harvard. Navy comfortably in third. As we come to the 500-meter mark to go, keep your eye on Harvard and Yale in 1 and 2, Navy in lane 4. And over to the tech tent.
Yale crew in the lead right now, looking to move into that grand final for the third varsity 8 tomorrow. So Yale's your leader with Harvard second, Navy in third, Dartmouth being the crew that looks to be contending most for that third qualifying position. Cornell and Northeastern in the 5th and 6th position right now. So Yale pressing. Yale got that lead off of Harvard, established it. Now they've just kind of been kicking and trying to press every time Harvard responds. So Harvard has lifted the rate. You can see them getting a little bit higher here as they get into the red buoys of the final 250 meters. So Harvard wants to take that lead away from Yale here if they can. The lane assignments could matter tomorrow in the grand final. So each position in this semifinal will help determine the lane assignments for tomorrow. So Harvard pressing Yale right now. Harvard looking like they are higher than Yale. Harvard pressing to the line with the lead right now. Harvard over Yale. Navy clearly in third, with Northeastern moving back through Dartmouth and Cornell in the 4th position. So it's Harvard across the line first, a deck ahead of Yale. Open water back to the Naval Academy. Navy open water ahead of Northeastern, who has moved ahead of Dartmouth, followed by Cornell. So a pretty close race here for the 4th, 5th, 6th finish as well. But Harvard moving back up through Yale, kind of waiting their time and then making the move through the sprint to take that lead and win the semifinal for the third varsity 8. So a good race here from the Crimson to surge ahead of Yale in the sprint. So Harvard, Yale, and Navy will be joining Washington, California, and Princeton for the third varsity 8 final tomorrow to determine a national championship in the third varsity. The remaining crews will be moving on to the petite final for places 6 through 12. Up next, we have the semifinal number 3 of the men's third varsity 8. After the third varsity 8s are complete, we'll be moving into the men's varsity 4s, 4 semifinals for those crews, and finishing out the day with lightweight women's racing in the lightweight women's 4, the light women's double, and the repechage for the women's varsity lightweight 8. So in that first semifinal of the third varsity. You had the final times: Washington 5:45.8, California 5:47.5, Princeton 5:50.1, Boston 5:52.7, Wisconsin 5:59.9, and Syracuse in 6:04.9. In the second heat of the men's third varsity 8, Harvard was your winner there. We just saw Harvard 5:44.5, Yale 5:45.4, Navy in 5:51.6, Northeastern 5:56.1, Dartmouth 5:57.4, and Cornell 5:57.9. So again, your 6 crews moving forward to the grand final were Harvard, Yale, Navy, Washington, Cal, and Princeton. So great work from those crews in the third varsity 8. So now we are off in semifinal number 3 with 3 crews moving forward to the third level final, and the 4th place crew will be racing All right, so here we go. The 4 crews here: Brown in lane 1, St. Joe's in 2, Santa Clara in 3, and Stanford on the outside in lane 4. So 4 crews here trying to get the lead. Right now it's Brown who's established that early jump. It looks to be almost a half a length in their high strokes here, with the other 3 crews running very close to level. St. Joe's, Santa Clara, and Stanford, those 3 running very close together, but they are all clearly behind Brown, who has now almost got their coxswain out to the bow ball of the St. Joe's crew. So Brown with a very strong start. Stanford and St. Joe's running in 2nd and 3rd. St. Joe's maybe just a little edge over the crew from Stanford, with Santa Clara in the 4th position here. So Brown clearly establishing their lead early on, and it looks like Brown's coxswain is now past the bow ball of the other crews, looking to get that open water lead before 500 meters. So a great start from the Brown third varsity 8. Let's head on out to the launch.
Stanford has established itself as the solid leader, 600 meters in to the first CD semifinal of the men's third varsity. They have about 5 feet of open water on St. Joseph's already. St. Joseph's with 1 deck over Stanford, and Stanford with half a length over Santa Clara. So a 4-boat race with 3 to advance, and one of those almost certainly looks to be Stanford, as they are just cruising. They are rowing a little bit high, but they are rowing very relaxed. There's a nice fight now going on as Stanford has attacked the St. Joe position and moved past them into 2nd place. It's Stanford by about 2 seats over St. Joseph's. However, those 2 crews are beginning to pull away from 4th place Santa Clara. It's nearly a length now from Stanford and St. Joseph's back to Santa Clara. Brown at 35.5, approaching the 1,000, has about 1/3 of a length of open water over Stanford. Stanford with about 1 seat over St. Joseph's, and now a tiny bit of open water from St. Joseph's back to Santa Clara. Brown continues to move away. It's nearly half a length of open water now. St. Joseph's and Stanford still locked in a pretty good battle for 2nd. Stanford now has moved out to maybe 2 or 3 seats over the Hawks. But St. Joseph's still in relatively comfortable position for qualifying, with about 5 feet of open water over Santa Clara. So middle of the third 500, it's Stanford pretty much unchallenged for most of the race. Now about 3/4 of a length of open water over Stanford. Stanford had pulled out on St. Joseph's a bit, but it's closing up again. It's now about 1.5 seats to 2 seats of Stanford over St. Joseph's. Then it's about a third of a length of open water back to Santa Clara. So Stanford at 35, St. Joseph's maybe a touch higher, but as we cross 500, it's Brown leading the parade home. The only question is, will St. Joseph's make a last-ditch effort to catch Stanford for second, and Santa Clara trailing as we turn you over to the finish line 10th.
Okay, so Brown clearly establishing that lead, holding on to it the whole way down the race course now. They got that open water by the first 500 meters, and Stanford in that second position, St. Joe's in third, with Santa Clara running in the fourth position. So we'll have three crews moving into the third level final, and the fourth place finisher will be in a fourth level final with one other crew coming from the semifinal number 4, which is our next race. So Brown with the lead, St. Joe's and Stanford in the other qualifying positions. So Brown clearly moving well together. So with the elimination of the freshman event, a lot of younger guys, development guys for the teams here in this third varsity 8. So Brown putting together a nice strong race here on Saturday of the 2017 IRA Championships. Stanford in your second qualifying position with St. Joe's in the third position. Santa Clara trailing St. Joe's just off their stern. So the young men from Brown here cranking the rate up, just a little bump up in the rate in the final 250 meters. Rowing well, rowing together, moving the boat, trying to sit tall and swing. And Stanford in just open water a little bit behind Brown, and Stanford has open water ahead of St. Joe's, who is just ahead of Santa Clara. So 4 boats, 3 through to the third level final of the third varsity 8. So a good race from Brown. Early on, they got that lead. They had a nice start, took the open water by the first 500 meter mark, and continued to move away and hold off Stanford and St. Joe's. So in semifinal number 3, we have Brown, Stanford, and St. Joe's moving on to the third level final. So in that last semifinal for the men's 3v8, Harvard was your winner, 5:44.5, followed by Yale very close behind at 5:45.4. Navy was 5:51.6. Northeastern 5:56.1, Dartmouth 5:57.4, and Cornell 5:57.9. So a good race in that second semifinal. Harvard, Yale, and Navy joining Washington, California, and Princeton for tomorrow's third Varsity 8 Grand Final. The third Varsity 8 semifinal number 3 that we just watched go by. Brown was your winner in 5:59.1, followed by Stanford 6:04.7, and St. Joe's 6:09.3, with Santa Clara and 6:15.8. And we'll head back out to the drone view of semifinal number 4 here. 4 boats racing, 3 boats to move forward to the third level final. And it's George Washington in lane 1, Oregon State in lane 2, Drexel in lane 3, and UC San Diego in lane 4. So all 4 of these crews are now locked into the starting platform. Looks like we have alignment and a start. So it looks like, all right, a good start from George Washington, getting a deck on Oregon State. Oregon State just ahead of UC San Diego and Drexel here in the first 250 meters or so. But clearly George Washington taking about a deck length on Oregon State and UC San Diego. Drexel trailing in the 4th position right now. 3 crews moving on to the semifinal, or to the third level final of the third Varsity 8. So clearly, it looks like George Washington wants to assert themselves early in the race here, establish their lead, and then be able to respond and react to anyone's challenge here. So George Washington is your leader, Oregon State in second, then the UCSD Tritons in third place right now, with Drexel just behind them. So George Washington, Oregon State trying to challenge them now. Oregon State appears to have kind of neutralized George Washington's quick start, and Oregon State trying to move back into that lead that George Washington established. So it's George Washington, Oregon State, and UC San Diego in the 3 qualifying positions right now. Let's go ahead out to the launch.
Race number 14 with George Washington leading at the 600-meter mark over Oregon State. And UCSD would be a very close third, with Drexel sandwiched in between. 35 for GW, 37 for Oregon, but it looks like a comfortable 37. GW has about 3 seats anyway on Oregon State. 3 of these crews will advance. Drexel is still fairly high, and but UCSD has got their nose in front in lane 4 here, so it's spreading out a little bit in this third 500 as we approach the 1,000-meter mark, the halfway point. It's Drexel or George Washington now increasing the lead by a seat. 36 for George Washington. Lots of ratio there. Good swing out of bow as they head Oregon State. Beat higher for 37 for the orange-clad Oregon State rowers over in lane 2. Drexel still spinning their wheels at 39.40, and they are coming back now on San Diego, but Drexel definitely a couple beats higher than they are. But going back to the front, it's really GW, very rope-a-dope rhythm there, just kind of smooth and kicking it along. That's a very comfortable 36. Well, and maybe that's why it's comfortable. It's 34, my stroke taker says. It's got a lot of ratio there. A little bit more time in between strokes allows the hull to run out a bit more. 38 for Oregon State. They've started to press. They want to make a statement here and try and run even with GW. So we'll see what happens here in the last 600 meters. If the orange-clad Oregon Staters can catch up here. 500 meters to go, just about. And Oregon State is closing on GW. So they're throwing the strokes at them, and they're coming up as we get ready to turn it over to the technicians at the finish.
Here we go. We got a good race for that third qualifying position and a very tight race for first place here between George Washington and Oregon State University. So you can see Drexel and UC San Diego trying to really fight for that third spot, that spot that gets them into the third level final, assuring them a top 18 finish in the men's third varsity 8. So George Washington alongside the shore here, and the Beavers rowing the most colorful bow at the IRA Regatta in the Joey Hansen shell, the red, white, and blue on the bow of the Beavers crew. And Oregon State really trying to push through George Washington now to finish strong here. And you got a great race for this next qualifying spot with Drexel pushing UC San Diego all the way to the line. So we're going to have two very tight finishes here. Open water behind Oregon State and George Washington, back to Drexel and UC San Diego. So two very tight races here. Oregon State moving ahead of George Washington. George Washington responding. A great race between these two crews. Very close racing. It looks like the Oregon State crew is going to take this one. Oregon State over the line first, George Washington in second. A good race from those two crews in this semifinal number 4 of the third varsity 8, and Drexel's trying to hold on to that next qualifying spot ahead of UC San Diego. So UC San Diego finishing in 4th, Drexel just ahead of them in the qualifying position. A great race from those two crews. Drexel coming back through UC San Diego's lead early on, and Oregon State moving through George Washington's lead. So 2 close races going on within that one semifinal. So we have 3 crews moving on, and that is Oregon State, George Washington, and Drexel, who will be joining Brown, Stanford, and St. Joe's in the 3rd level final of the men's 3rd varsity 8. So a good race going on there in semifinal number 4. So coming up next, we got some very good races for you scheduled with the men's varsity 4 semifinals number 1 and semifinal number 2 coming up next. So the men's varsity 4s, we should be seeing some great racing here. From semifinal number 1, we have Washington in lane 1, Naval Academy in 2. They were both winners of their heat. The remaining crews moved through the repechage yesterday afternoon. Boston University in 3, Brown in 4, Marist in lane 5, and out in lane 6 is Dartmouth. So a good race in that semifinal number 4 of the men's 3rd varsity 8. And just looking quickly at the times from the last 2 semifinals. In the semifinal number 3 for the 3rd varsity, Brown was your winner in 5:59.1, with Stanford 6:04.7, St. Joe's in 6:09.3 as your final qualifier, and Santa Clara finishing in 6:15.8. So, and semifinal number 4, Oregon State was your winner in 5:58.0, George Washington in 5:59.5, Drexel at 6:12.2, and UC San Diego at 6:13.0. So we've got the starting platform realigned for these 4s, the shorter boats, so the docks move just a little bit to align them directly on the 2,000 meter starting point. And we have the first semifinal coming up for the men's varsity 4. The Huskies from Washington in lane 1, the Naval Academy in lane 2, Boston University in 3, Brown in 4, Marist in 5, and Dartmouth in 6. Top 3 move to the grand final. The next 3 will be into the petite final tomorrow. So expecting good racing from these varsity 4s coming up shortly. Yeah. Okay, as we're looking at the starting line for the semifinal number 1 of the men's varsity 4, and we have a start to this first semifinal of the varsity 4. So a little bit of a mix of crews here. You got some crews that are their top 4 guys, like Marist University in lane 5, and the other crews, it is their guys that come after the 3rd varsity 8. So a little bit lower in their program, but a smaller program like Marist, getting their top guys the chance to race some really good competition here. So you can see in lane 1, the Huskies have got the early lead, with Naval Academy in lane 2 just behind them, and it looks like from the outer lane, Dartmouth is trying to get themselves out early off of a good start from Dartmouth. So you've got Washington, Navy, Dartmouth, and Marist with the crews in the middle, Brown and BU just trailing. So Washington is out with their stroke seat out past the bow of the Naval Academy. So a really strong start from the Huskies. And the other 5 crews are still all overlapping here. So we've got a good chance to see these 5 crews, which 2 will be moving with the Huskies, who have taken that early lead and seem to be moving away with ease here. So the Huskies in lane 1, Lanes 2 and 3 very tight together, with Dartmouth in lane 6 and Marist in lane 5 also in contention here. So Navy and BU, Dartmouth and Marist, with Brown just slightly back but certainly not out of it yet. So the Huskies taking that open water lead here as we are off the start well. All crews moving. Let's head on out to the launch for the call.
Well, it's the Washington Huskies 600 meters into semifinal number 1. They have just blown away from the field. They have nearly a length of open water over Navy, which has about a seat and a half over Boston University. Boston University with half a length over Marist, and then another half a length back to both Dartmouth and Brown. It's Washington motoring away from the field, just pouring it on. BU closing in. They are approaching Navy, and they are about to draw even. But we've also got a good attack going on here in lane 5 from Marist. Marist half a length ahead of Brown, and then another half a length to Dartmouth. Washington now probably a length and a half of open water. 800 meters into the race, as Boston University now has drawn level with Navy for second, but this Marist scrappy little crew here is still moving up. They're about a third of a length behind BU and Navy. Half a length further back, we have Brown lurking. So right now, I'm going to call Washington safe at the 1,000. I think Fred Schock's nodding head agrees with me. There's a four-way race for the other two qualifying spots, from second place BU to fourth place Brown is about 3/4 of a length of a Coxed 4. It's BU still in second, maybe a third of a length ahead of Navy.
35 for BU.
BU at 35. Navy coming back on them though. But also approaching, we've got both Marist at 36 and Brown now drawing up level with Marist. So at this point, from second place BU to fourth place everybody else, it's a half a length, as both Brown and Marist are drawing up on Navy. They're about a deck length back, with BU not quite a deck length ahead of Brown. By the way, Washington's up there somewhere.
Wow, it's tightening up here.
This is a really tight race here at 600 to go for second through fifth.
They come down to the sprint.
It's 3 to qualify, and the sprint is going to be everything. It's BU by about a third of a length over Navy. Navy by 2 seats over Brown. Brown by 1 or 2 seats over Marist, as Washington crosses the 500 meter to go mark. Eventually, soon enough, BU, then Navy, Brown closing up to draw level with Navy, and Marist right behind, as we turn you over to the finish line tent.
All right, so great racing going on here. Washington clearly with the lead, but a great fight for the second and third position, the two more crews that will qualify for the grand final. We have Brown surging into that second position, pressing with the Naval Academy, BU, and Marist in contention as well. So folks, turn your eyes to the water, watch the finish of this semifinal number 1 of the Varsity 4. We got a great race going on for qualification into the grand final and a chance at the medals tomorrow. But the Huskies are showing to be the class of this semifinal right now, with an open water lead. Looking strong, long, and relaxed here are the Huskies in lane 1, closest to the shore. But we have a wonderful fight going on between 4 crews. Brown looking to surge into that second position with BU and the Naval Academy and Marist. All 4 crews fairly close together, with 2 more with the Huskies to go through to the grand final. So right now the Huskies clearly in the lead. Huskies staying long, strong, and rowing relatively low, but these other 4 crews have all notched up the rate. They've all started their sprint and moved through final little bit of the race with 2 to go. It's looking like Brown and BU are going to take it. It's the Huskies over the line first. Brown and BU surging bow ball to bow ball, with BU crossing just ahead of Brown, who's ahead of Marist and the Naval Academy. A very good race and effort from all of these crews here in this semifinal number 1 of the varsity fours. And Dartmouth rounding out the field in the 6th position. So 3 crews moving on to the grand final, 3 more crews moving into tomorrow's petite for the varsity fours. Up next, we'll have semifinal number 2 of the men's varsity fours. We'll have in lane number 1, Marietta, a heat winner from yesterday. California, also a heat winner from yesterday in lane 2. They'll be joined by Princeton in lane 3, Harvard in 4, MIT in 5, and Wisconsin out in lane 6. So probably looking at another very good race with 3 boats to qualify for the grand final of the varsity 4. And it looks like we are underway with California getting the clear lead from the drone view here. You can see California taking the lead off of the other crews from Princeton, Marietta, MIT, and Wisconsin, with Harvard in lane 4. So California is your leader early on here. California in lane 2, with Princeton looking to be the 2nd place crew right now, and a very tight race going on for the 3rd qualifying position. Marietta in lane 1, Harvard out in lane 4, MIT and Wisconsin also in the fight for qualification into the grand final, where they will be joining Washington, BU, and Brown. So California trying to do what the Huskies did, get that lead, hold on, and just control the race. Princeton is in that solid 2nd position, but the race for 3rd and final qualifying spot is definitely up in the air. So California, Princeton, and then a tight race for the 3rd position. So from above, you can see California has a bucket-style rig, 2 guys in the center of the boat, 2-seat and 3-seat rowing the same side. And California has taken that lead, but Princeton's really not letting them off the hook here. Princeton's staying right with them, and we're going to turn it over to the guys in the launch. Let's see how things are going.
California has the lead here in this semifinal 2 for the fours. Princeton, the scrappy Tigers, probably in 2nd place. Then the Badgers out here in lane 6 are making a good run for that 3rd spot, and they're trading strokes with Marietta all the way over. All 3 crews, those recent crews I mentioned, are at 36. But the Bears have a length on the Tigers, and then it's over to the Badgers to complete the triumvirate of animal mascots. Marietta 37 is pulled up and is challenging Wisconsin now for that 3rd spot. And Princeton's come up a little bit to overlap with Cal, and we have this stroke here of yesterday. I saw the Princeton strokes got this real upright finish as he finishes his stroke. Kind of does a chin up there in the last part of the drive, but it seems to be working for him. So the Cal Bears still out front, the Tigers in 2nd, and then it's a toss-up for 3rd. I guess you have to give Marietta the edge. Yeah, definitely Marietta. Maybe a half a length up on the Badgers. Harvard would be then in 5th place, with MIT trailing.
Marietta 37, everyone else 36.
Marietta's at 37. All the other crews are at 36. Marietta's throwing some strokes at it. They'd like to draft off the Princeton fumes there and try and get into that final. 500 meters to go. We'll keep going a little bit here. The Cal Bears, I think, perked up a little bit, and they're sitting up a little taller and driving it home. They've gotten almost a full length now on Princeton. But whether the Badgers can do something here and come up, That would be the question here. Over to the finish.
Okay, so the Badgers are trying to catch Marietta for that third qualifying spot, but California has their lead. They're sitting in front of Princeton, just responding to anything Princeton can throw at them, trying to hold that length lead that they've established. Princeton ahead of Marietta, with Wisconsin throwing in the challenge here for that third qualifying spot. So it's California, your leader in lane 2, second lane out from the beach here. Marietta alongside the shore, trying to be that third qualifying crew. So California, Princeton, Marietta, with Wisconsin running close behind, Harvard pressing as well, MIT trailing. But right now it's California doing what the Huskies did, just clearly in the lead, trying to stay calm, comfortable, and control the race here in the last 200 meters. So Cal in lane 2 has the lead ahead of Princeton, with Marietta moving up a little bit on Princeton in this last 500 meters. Harvard pressing Wisconsin as well here. So clearly California, Princeton, and Marietta, with Harvard throwing in the best challenge to Marietta now. Wisconsin running in 5th and MIT in 6th. California looking good and strong, crossing the line. The Golden Bears in 1st, Princeton in 2nd, and Marietta going through to the grand final in lane 1, with Harvard finishing 4th, Wisconsin 5th, and MIT just crossing the line in 6th. So a good race from these crews, Princeton and California. California controlling it. California holding on to that lead almost the whole way down the race course, with Princeton running in 2nd most of the way, and Marietta moving through to the grand final of the men's varsity 4. So Marietta, California, and Princeton will be joining Washington, BU, and Brown in the grand final of the varsity 4 tomorrow to determine a national championship in their event. Let's go ahead and head back out to the start for semifinal number 3 of the men's varsity 4s.
And we're at the start line of the men's varsity 4. This is semi number 3. These crews gaining their point. It's Drexel, Colgate, Oregon State, and Pennsylvania, with the top 3 advancing to the third level final. And Colgate, Oregon State, and Drexel all saw each other in Heat 2 yesterday in lanes 3, 4, and 5. So they'll get the chance to race again now. And these crews are off a clean start from all 4. I'd say with Drexel and Colgate as our early leader, not to be left out, Pennsylvania starting to push back a little bit on Oregon State. Colgate surging through their high strokes. I'd say Colgate slight advantage over Drexel in 2nd place, with a beautiful shot here from the drone as these crews move through the first 300 meters and lengthen into their base cadence. And it is Colgate in the first 300 meters or so. All of these crews now moving toward the 500 down, but look at Colgate go, now up almost a length over Drexel in lane 1. Both of those crews pressing back on Pennsylvania, then back to Oregon, which means it's Colgate, Drexel, Pennsylvania, and Oregon State in the men's varsity 4, semi number 3. Colgate now sitting on this margin of just under a length on 2nd place Drexel. And again, it is a race for 3rd in this semifinal number 3, with 3 of these crews moving on to the third level final. Right now, that would be Colgate, Drexel, and Penn, but there's still plenty of time, and Oregon State, not to be left out, still in the mix. We'll send it over to the water for the middle 1,000 now.
It's Colgate who has burst out in front. They've got about 3/4 of a length over Drexel. Drexel with about 3/4 of a length over Pennsylvania, and Penn just a couple of feet over Oregon State. So Colgate rowing 35. I'd call that, it's probably 2/3 of a length over the Drexel crew. The Penn crew is closing up. They've drawn to within about a half a length of Drexel, and they are now a deck length ahead of Oregon State. So with 3 to go through, this is still anybody's dogfight. It's Penn now substantially moving ahead into third. They've got a little more than a deck over Oregon State. Colgate's still your leader, half a length over Drexel. Drexel half a length over the Quakers. The Quakers a third of a length over Oregon State. Oregon State, though, has dug in. It looked like they were about to be dropped, but they have dug in and they are now moving back. They are 2 seats behind Pennsylvania and 1 length, just about overlapped, 1 length with Drexel. Crossing the 1,000, it's still Colgate. They've got 2/3 of a length still on Drexel, but both Penn and Oregon State now moving back a little bit on Drexel. Oregon State throwing the strokes in. They're probably rowing a little higher than anyone else. But what can you do when you were in 4th place and about to fall out of it? Because now you're right back in it.
38 for Penn now.
Penn's rowing 38. They've got an interesting quandary here as they both try to focus in on taking second away from Drexel, but also keeping 4th place Oregon State from getting past them. And that's down to about a seat now, Penn over Oregon State. But Penn has closed up to within about a quarter length of Drexel. So it's now Colgate by 1 length. But I wouldn't feel all that secure if I were Colgate. I'd want more distance between what's turning into a 3-way dogfight for 2 spots. It's Drexel by half a deck over Penn. Penn by 1 seat over Oregon State. So Colgate still 1 length in the lead. That lead is now over Penn. It's Penn by 1 seat over both Drexel and Oregon State. We're coming into 500 meters now. This is going to be an all or nothing battle. 3 crews dead across for 2 spots.
And moving into the last 500 meters, an exciting race in semifinal number 3 of the men's varsity 4. Colgate clearly in command here, though there's still time, and Oregon State, Pennsylvania, and Drexel wanting to advance to the 3rd level final with top 3 to move on to that 3rd level final, and the 4th crew moving on to the 4th level final. Right now, coming through with about 300 meters to go, we'll see as these crews get a little bit closer exactly where they stack up, but we're keeping an eye on Oregon State, Penn, and Drexel, with Colgate not too far ahead of them as we last saw. 3 to advance, which means it is a race for 3rd as these crews now move into the last 250 meters and into the red. Colgate, Drexel, Oregon State, Pennsylvania, only 3 to move on to that 3rd level final. And who will it be right now as they come through into the last 200 meters or so? We see Colgate really pressing ahead. Some great work from the Quakers too, but it is Colgate, Oregon State, and Drexel now moving through as they approach the last 20 strokes. Colgate, Oregon State, Pennsylvania, Drexel, all 4 of these crews getting work done in the last 20 strokes or so. Really tight work, but it looks like we've solidified now our 3 contenders to advance. In lane 2, Colgate. In lane 3, Oregon State. And in lane 4, Pennsylvania. Which means it is Colgate, Oregon State, and Pennsylvania to advance to the 3rd level final as Drexel now comes through the line. An exciting race, certainly in the middle 1,000 for sure, in the men's varsity 4 semi number 3. And up next, semifinal number 4, the fourth semi of 4 for the men's varsity 4. That'll include Columbia, Holy Cross, Fairfield, Gonzaga, and Cornell. Oh. And confirming that Cornell is a scratch for this semifinal number 4, which means it will be another 4-boat semifinal here. Columbia, Holy Cross, Fairfield, and Gonzaga. And times are in for semifinal number 3, which we just saw go by. It was Colgate at a 636.9, Oregon State 639.0. Pennsylvania 642.2, and Drexel at a 646.0. And it looks like these crews are off as the drone comes in. Fast start from Holy Cross in lane 2. Again, it's 4 boats here with 3 to move on to the 3rd level final. And man, look at Holy Cross go. They are definitely up on the field. On the outside of them, Columbia and Fairfield with Gonzaga in 4th. But it is Holy Cross. Looks like Fairfield gaining a little bit of speed as they move into their base cadence and out of the starting sequence. But it is Holy Cross, Fairfield in 2nd, Columbia 3rd, Gonzaga in 4th. Holy Cross sitting in 1st, up about a half a length advantage over Fairfield. Though I'd say Columbia's on the move too. Should be a good race certainly between these 3 crews. And there's still time. Gonzaga about 1 length or so behind the pack. But it's Holy Cross, our early leader. Fairfield about a half a length down from them, followed by Columbia. All of these crews now moving into the second 500 over to the launch.
Lead here in race number 18, men's varsity 4 semifinal 4. They have a length up on Fairfield. And Holy Cross running around 35. Fairfield overlap. And then it's back over to Columbia in 3rd position. About 2/3 of a length behind Fairfield. And then over to the Gonzaga. Gonzaga in lane number 4. About a length off the stern of the Columbia shell. So it's the Crusaders from Worcester, Mass, out at 36 strokes a minute, hanging on to a lead now over Fairfield. Fairfield's bow just on the stern of Holy Cross. Columbia still a length up on Gonzaga. So smooth sailing here. Holy Cross beginning to push a little bit further out in front. Call it a little open, just a splash of open water. As we approach the 1,000-meter mark, Holy Cross will pass through the plane first, followed by Fairfield, about 2/3 to a half a length ahead of Columbia. A little flutter for Holy Cross, and it's increased their lead to about 1/3 of a length of open water. Columbia charging up now a little bit. They're taking a press to try and catch Fairfield, and they're only a seat or so down on Fairfield. In fact, Columbia's charging here into, well, they're not quite to 2nd spot yet. Let's see if they can continue their momentum. But Holy Cross has really decided they are going to press this one out, and they've got 2/3 of a length of open water. Fairfield checked the move from Columbia. They're back to a couple seats lead. And Fairfield's come up a little bit, closed the gap on Holy Cross. Holy Cross has got a good rhythm though, good swing, lift, a good lift. 4 width, as I mentioned yesterday, a little bit heavier than the 8s, a little slower. So it's a little bit harder, and you got to pick it up each stroke. And the boys from Worcester are doing just that. So getting close to the 500 to go. We'll follow it a little bit farther. Columbia's, they've made a couple of attempts to catch Fairfield, but have not done so yet. But maybe with 400 meters, 500 meters to go here, they can wind it up. Let's see. And Columbia's at 38. And over to the 10.
And now moving into the last 500 meters of the men's varsity 4 semi number 4. Holy Cross early leaders with a comfortable length or so of open water. Looks like Fairfield was starting to move through Columbia, about 700 meters to go. It is top 3 to advance to the grand final, and right now it's looking like that will be Holy Cross, Fairfield, and Columbia. Holy Cross looks to be a little bit lower, maybe a beat or so than over the rest of the field. Right now, all 3 of these crews moving into the last 150, 200 meters or so, with top 3 moving on to the 3rd level final. It's looking to be Holy Cross, Fairfield, and Columbia. Looks like Gonzaga has picked it up just a little bit to see what they can do in the last 20 to 30 strokes, but it's Holy Cross now just about bow to stern on 2nd place Fairfield. Columbia definitely in their sprint sequence, solidifying that 3rd place position to advance to the 3rd level final. Look at the sprint from Columbia, starting to walk now on Fairfield. Beautiful sprint from Columbia. Nice last 20 strokes or so from that crew. I'd say it's Holy Cross and really close between Columbia and Fairfield. We'll have results here in just a moment with 4th place Gonzaga. 3 to advance, so for sure, Holy Cross, Fairfield, and Columbia awaiting times. What a sprint from Columbia in lane 1. And just to confirm, it was Columbia in 2nd. The beautiful sprint from that crew, which puts Fairfield in 3rd. We're at the start line now, switching gears to the women's varsity lightweight 4, heat 1 of 1. This is a 7-boat heat with Stanford, MIT, Princeton, Tulsa, Radcliffe, Boston, and Wisconsin. For the lightweights, we saw really nice work out of Boston this morning in the 8. We'll see what they get up to in the 4. All crews locked in, gaining their points. 7-boat heat, women's lightweight 4, and they are off. Looking like a pretty clean start across the board here as these crews come out of the gate. It's looking like Stanford was out pretty quick in lane 1. Boston, nice clean start from that crew too. I'd say Stanford and BU got out of the gate pretty quick. Princeton now starting to assert its dominance as well. Stanford, Boston, Princeton, MIT. With Wisconsin on the far side and lane 7 pretty tightly here next to Boston University. I'd say those are our 3 leaders, Stanford, Boston, Wisco, with a very tight MIT and Princeton. then back to Tulsa and Radcliffe as the rest of the field starts to push them away. Stanford in lane 1, moving along, clipping along pretty nicely. Again, bookends, I'd say, of these lanes in lane 1 and lane 7, which is Stanford and Wisco, moving the quickest. First to Stanford, second to Wisco. Third will be a close right now between Boston and MIT. And I'd say it is Stanford over Wisconsin. Boston not to be left out, looking to solidify their third place position, but MIT is going to challenge them over in lane 2. It is Stanford, Wisconsin in second. I'd say really tight between Wisco and Stanford, tight between Boston, BU, over to the middle 1,000 on the water.
Lanes for the women's varsity lightweight fours at about 600 meters, and Stanford solid lead here. They've got open water on the field. In second place over here in lane 7 looks like Wisconsin, and they are very, very tight with MIT in lane 2. Actually, Wisconsin closing in. They are making a solid move. They've moved away from MIT, and they are now overlapped with Stanford. So it's MIT in third. They're about a half a length ahead of both Princeton and Boston University. Then it's a little bit of open water back, excuse me, a little bit of open water back to Radcliffe and then Tulsa. So Stanford, they saw that challenge from Wisconsin, and it looks like they've answered it. They're pulling away again. They've got their length back. So it's one length from Stanford back to Wisconsin, but we can hear Wisconsin, Coxon, she wants another move out of her crew. Wisconsin now nearly one length ahead of MIT, and Boston University beginning to close in on MIT. They are about a seat and a half back. Then it's about 3/4 of a length back to Princeton, another length plus to Radcliffe, and then another length back to Tulsa. So as they approach the 1,000 meters, Stanford with a length, maybe a splash of open water. Wisconsin in second, crosses the 1,000, about one length ahead of MIT. MIT has a third of a length on Boston University, who now has nearly a length on Princeton. Princeton with a little bit of open water on Radcliffe, and then another length back to Tulsa. So Stanford beginning to pull away now in the third 500. They've got about a half a length of open water over Wisconsin. And MIT looks like they're interested in taking second place. They have pulled up to within 2/3 of a length of Wisconsin. That's all been within the last 10-15 strokes. MIT now with 3/4 of a length over Boston University. BU feeling a little pressure from Princeton. That's down to about a half a length. Radcliffe now a length and a half behind Princeton, and Tulsa trailing. Stanford continues to move away. Stanford at 37 and a half, just picking that boat along. Very nice. Very nice. Clean rowing, sharp catches, clean finishes, and now 3/4 of a length of open water over Wisconsin. Wisconsin at 34 has dug in. They've stopped the MIT move. That's now about a length again. And MIT, having failed in that bid for second place, is feeling the pressure for third from Boston University, who's coming on strong and is within a seat or so at this point of overtaking MIT. So as we cross 500 meters, it's Stanford leading the parade. It is Wisconsin second. It's MIT holding on desperately to third right now with Boston University. A length back to Princeton, then a little open back to Radcliffe, and then Tulsa. Over to the finish line tent.
And now moving into the last 500 for the women's varsity lightweight four. Again, the only heat, Stanford, MIT, Princeton, Tulsa, Radcliffe, BU, and Wisco, with beautiful work from Stanford, who we saw get out early along with Wisconsin. On either ends of the race, these two crews are our leaders in this heat. And this is a race for lanes here, since there is no rep or semifinal from these crews. So the strategy here is to get the best, solidify the best lane that you can for tomorrow's final. So right now it'll be a 7-boat final tomorrow. And it's looking like Stanford will get their pick of lanes for that grand final right now. Stanford getting work done here in the last stretch along with Wisconsin. Boston University looking sharp as well as those crews look to push back the rest of the field. But again, keeping an eye on Stanford, Wisco, and Boston, I'd say, on the outside lanes of the course. Stanford now in their final few strokes, Wisconsin as well. Boston University on the far side next to Wisconsin, but look at Stanford go, moving through the line, finishing about 1 length up over second place Wisconsin. Then open water back about half a length to Boston University in third. Then coming through the line now, MIT, Princeton, and in their final few strokes, Radcliffe. So we'll see all of these crews again tomorrow for the grand final. Stanford getting their pick of lanes, followed by Wisco and BU. That was the lightweight women's 4, heat 1 of 1. Up next is the women's varsity lightweight double, heat 1. And this is heat 1 of 1. It includes Radcliffe, Wisconsin, Princeton, MIT, Boston, and Stanford. And these crews are all off. Keeping in mind these doubles, this race will be a little bit longer, of course, than what we see with the 8s or the 4s. So a bit more strategy there and a lot of work to do in the middle 1,000. Looks like Wisconsin has had a really nice start out in lane 2, along with Boston University over to lane 5, and Radcliffe in lane 1, but it's still early in these first 250, 300 meters. I'd say our early leader is Wisconsin over in lane 2. They're about a half a length up over Radcliffe in lane 1. Not to be left out, Stanford on the far side over in lane 6, which means it's Wisco, Stanford, and Radcliffe as our early leaders. Boston University definitely getting work done in the first 400 meters here as well. Boston now about 1 length, maybe a half a length back on Stanford. So it's either Stanford or Wisconsin in first. A little tough to say right now. Stanford on the move, though, as they approach the 500-meter mark down. I'd say it is Stanford, then Wisconsin and Boston, Wisco and Boston. Definitely a race for second. Over to the water and the launch for the middle K.
All right, we've got the women's lightweight doubles pouring down the course here. And this is a race for lanes, I'm told, so they're scooting along here in lane 6. I'd call Stanford your leader, closely followed by BU and Wisco. I'd say Wisco has a seat maybe or so on the Terriers from Boston, but this is all, you know, brand new for not raced any races before this year. This championship, we don't really have any way to seed these crews. It's a good chance for these gals to go down the course and have a good test run. So, sorry, 36 for Stanford is pretty zippy, and they're open water ahead of Boston University, which has taken over second position. 35 strokes a minute for BU and Wisco. Then it's back to the Tigers, open water back to the Tigers, and then over on the far side, we've got Radcliffe in lane 1. It would be running in 5th, and MIT trailing by several lengths open water in lane 6. I'm sorry, in lane 4, I think. But they're back. They're struggling a bit. So as we go through the halfway, it's Stanford. Pretty good sculling here. They drop it in very cleverly and apply the pressure to the footboards. Boston University is still in second, just a few feet ahead of Wisconsin. Let's see if Wisconsin takes a push here. All these crews now at 34, the front runners, but it spreads out quite a bit. That Stanford continues to march away here. I don't know these gals' names, but they're having a nice row, just poking it along, which seems to be the MO of their other boats. Their 4 and their 8 row a little bit higher and just try and be efficient and keep poking it, tapping it, we say, in the trade. It looks like Wisconsin took a press and maybe slightly ahead of Boston right now in that second position. Princeton still running in 4th, open water behind Boston University. Radcliffe open water behind Princeton, and MIT trails. So Stanford really makes it look effortless. Doesn't look like they're doing any serious weightlifting there. They're just efficient and they're gliding over the surface. Looks very nice. Boston University has come back, I think, to take the second place position out away from Wisconsin. Princeton has moved up a little bit in that 4th slot. So we're getting ready to turn it over to the tower or the tent, whichever you prefer, with Stanford well in the lead.
And moving into the last 500 for the women's lightweight double, heat 1 of 1. This is a 6-boat race for lanes tomorrow in the grand final, with some good racing over in lane 5 and 6 between Boston University and Stanford. We started to see Princeton edge a little bit into that as well in these lightweight women's doubles. Again, Boston University, the defending champion from 2016. They finished 1st last year. 2nd was Wisco, and 3rd was Stanford. So in 2017, this year again, we see Boston and Stanford pushing each other as they now approach 250 to go. And we see over on the far side from shore, Stanford long and strong. Stanford definitely taking water here in the last 500, and look at them go to solidify that 1st place position. It is Stanford by several lengths over in lane 6. And we see Wisco has taken up the stroke rate here in the last 20 strokes. They're over in lane 2. Wisconsin now moving in. It looks like they are in a solid position here in the last 20 strokes or so as they look to press through Boston University. BU sitting in lane 5. So it is lane 2, Wisconsin, to take 2nd. Over to lane 5 and Boston University for 3rd. Here come the Tigers in 4th. Lane 3 as Radcliffe now moves through their final 5 over in lane 1. MIT coming through the line in the final 100 meters or so, final 50 meters here in their last stretch. And on the course is the women's lightweight 8 in rep 1. And their first 250 meters here in their starting sequence. Okay. With MIT now over the line, and the women's varsity lightweight 8 repechage off to a fast start here. Looking like Wisconsin off to a strong start here, up about a half a length. And it is Wisconsin leading this race as they approach 500 down. It's Wisconsin by about a bow deck. And we'll send it over to the water for the middle 1,000.
Okay, we've got a repechage coming down in our last race of the day for the lightweight women's 8. These women rode a couple of hours ago, and we've got 4 crews now trying to find the last 2 lanes in the final somewhere in their gas tank. We've got a solid leader here at 750 meters. It looks like Wisconsin by about 3/4 of a length or possibly a touch more over Georgetown. Georgetown has about a half a length over MIT, and MIT with nearly a length over Tulsa. So it is Wisconsin, yes, 3/4 of a length over Georgetown. Georgetown, 3/4 of a length over MIT. Looks like those 3 are going to joust for these 2 spots, although the Wisco boat's looking very strong. Really nice opening of the backs, really nice clean finishes. Their coxswain is now on the bow ball of second place Georgetown. MIT, though, as we cross the 1,000, is making a little bit of a push. They're now about 2/3 of a length behind Georgetown, and it looks like they're understroking Georgetown significantly. So it's Wisconsin nearly a length ahead of Georgetown. MIT closing in on Georgetown. That's about a half a length now of difference. Georgetown at about 36. Under pressure from MIT. MIT closing again. That's a little less than half a length now. And MIT is about a 1/4 length of open water ahead of Tulsa.
MIT is making a move.
So Wisconsin still with the lead, although Georgetown, in trying to fight off MIT, has moved back slightly. So their bow ball is almost up to the Wisconsin coxswain again. But MIT, relentless. MIT is less than half a length. That's now a 1/3 of a length difference. MIT at 38 with 650 meters to go, trying to push through for that last qualifying spot for the grand final.
36 for Wisco.
Wisconsin at 36 has seen the other crews come back on them, but they don't seem all that concerned. They've got a pretty solid lead of the coxswain on the bow ball of second place. But it's Georgetown in second, about a 1/3 of a length over MIT as they cross the 1,500 meter mark. So as Wisconsin begins to pull away, Georgetown trying furiously to hold off MIT, 1/3 of a length ahead. And as we turn it over to the tower, it's Wisconsin pulling away, Tulsa here, and a great fight for the last qualifying position.
And moving into the last 500, the last race of today. This is the repechage, Rep 1 for the women's varsity lightweight 8. With Wisconsin and Georgetown, some good racing between these two. It is first and second to the grand final, with the remaining crews going to the petite. Right now it's looking like that is Wisconsin and Georgetown. Georgetown pressing into Wisco a little bit here, letting them know that they're there as they come into the red, into the last 250. And it is Wisco and Georgetown. Georgetown's on the move. It looks like they've taken a seat or two from Wisconsin. Again, with 2 to advance to the grand. Both of these crews making sure that they're the 2 to go. And it is Wisco, it's Georgetown, then back to MIT and Tulsa, which means Wisconsin and Georgetown are looking to move on to the grand final tomorrow. Look at Wisco go. They have answered Georgetown. Wisconsin definitely in the last 200 meters or so, pressing back and now away from Georgetown. It is the Badgers up at least a half a length over Georgetown, and now more. Beautiful sprint from Wisconsin. So it's Wisco in first, Georgetown second, MIT third, Tulsa now in their final 10 strokes or so. So it's Wisco and Georgetown to join the grand final tomorrow, women's varsity lightweight 8. They will join Radcliffe, Stanford, Boston, and Princeton.
Okay, thank you for coming out to day 2 of the 2017 IRA National Championships. The schedule for tomorrow is tentative, with things starting off at 8 a.m. with the women's lightweight double. But check row2k.com, IRArowing.com, or the Twitter handle at IRA Rowing Champs to get the confirmed schedule a little later this afternoon. But racing should begin tomorrow at 8 a.m. So return to the course. Excited to see some grand finals racing and some national championships crowned. So follow for more information at www.irarowing.com. So a special thanks here to the Sacramento State Aquatic Center, the California State Parks, the Folsom Chamber of Commerce, and the Rancho Cordova Travel and Tourism Office, the U.S. rowing referees, and the production crew putting on the live stream here. And a special thanks to the IRA Regatta Committee for organizing this great event, and our sponsors, JL Racing, Row2K, Rowing News, and Sport Graphics. So we look forward to seeing everybody out here at the lake tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for the start of day 3 of the 2017 IRA National Championships.